I was an employee at Walmart, and this story happened back in 2010. At that time, I had two jobs. I was a waiter at a bistro, and in the afternoon until 10 p.m., I worked at Walmart, which was conveniently close to the bistro. I was young then, so I could handle both jobs, and I really needed the money to support my brother's education in Guadalajara, our hometown in Mexico. Weird stuff and strange moments at Walmart, especially at night, were nothing new to me. I mean, Walmart is one of those places that keep the police busy. There wasn't a week without some strange occurrence at the Walmart where I worked. Besides shoplifters, we often dealt with pranks and mischief from older folks, like messing with displayed items or knocking them over due to unnecessary careless movements, and we were the ones who had to clean up the mess. On top of that, there were incidents involving human waste in areas where it definitely shouldn't be. One night, while I was organizing items, I noticed a woman repeatedly passing by my aisle. She was wearing a coat and looked quite pale, which was fitting since it was a chilly night. Her eyes were sunken, and she seemed thin. I wasn't sure why, but she kept pacing back and forth, as if waiting for me to leave my spot. After a while, I moved to another shelf to restock, and she immediately approached the spot I had vacated. She picked up a prepaid phone and examined it closely. I continued my restocking but noticed from the corner of my eye that she was reaching into her pocket. I watched her carefully as she pulled out a knife and quickly opened the packaging of the prepaid phone. Since that was clearly not allowed, I quickly spoke up and pointed out what she was doing. However, I didn't approach her because she was holding a knife. I told her, "You need to pay for it, ma'am," but she responded that she could get it for free and claimed to know the manager of that Walmart. I told her that what she was doing was theft and that she needed to put down the knife because it wasn't safe for others or for us, as I was trying to reason with her politely. She kept insisting that the phone was hers and that she could take any item she wanted without me interfering because it was free for her. Some of my co-workers standing in other aisles were alerted, and I told them to call one of our managers. The woman put the phone in her coat pocket and walked towards the canned goods, grabbing two items and pocketing them as well. At that moment, she also pocketed the knife she was holding, so I found an opportunity to grab her arm. But as I did, she suddenly screamed and shook off my hand. It all happened so fast that I didn't realize she had pulled out her knife again and slashed at me. My arm bled profusely because the cut was deep, and by that time, many people were watching her and me. Our manager was trying to calm her down while I was just holding my bleeding arm. The manager continued talking to the woman for about 6 minutes, assuring her that she wouldn't have to pay for the items she had taken as long as she put down the knife and calmed down. But she still didn't listen to our manager's suggestion. Eventually, 2 cops arrived, as someone had called them, and they were also alerted to the situation. When they arrived, they tried to calm the woman down, but she got even more agitated and started to rage. She brandished the knife at anyone who tried to approach her. Well, soon after, the woman charged forward towards the onlookers, and fortunately, the cops had a taser and used it on her. In the end, everything was under control except for my bleeding wound, although one of my co-workers had already given me first aid. It turned out that the woman was stoned and wasn't in her right mind when she did all that. Worse, she had managed to hurt someone else. That was just one of the scariest and shittiest experiences I had while working at Walmart. You never know what kind of people you'll encounter at Walmart, each with their unique abilities and mindsets that you can't even imagine. I was 17 years old at that time and still in high school. We weren't well off, so I tried to save enough money to buy a car, even if it was just secondhand, because my dad was knowledgeable about cars and could fix it up in no time. I took on several side jobs, one of which was being an employee at Walmart. This incident happened in 2018, and my shift at work was at night due to my school schedule. I moved from aisle to aisle depending on where I was assigned. One particular night, I was in the aisle with soaps. I remember there was a promo at that time, and many people were grabbing that soap, so I was busy restocking almost every 30 minutes. Plus, it was a holiday the next day, so it was crowded even though it was late. Around 8:30ish p.m., a man approached my aisle. He was probably in his 40s, thin, with a tattoo on his right arm. He was simply dressed in a t-shirt and shorts, nothing fancy. He glanced at me while grabbing soaps. I was restocking a few feet away from where he was. He kept looking around, but his hands never stopped picking up soaps. He had a cart with him, and it was almost halfway full of soaps. That's when I got curious, thinking that's a lot of soap. Well, I approached him and asked if he needed any help. My tone wasn't rude. It was more curious because it was unusual for someone to buy that much soap. I remember a woman passing by and jokingly saying that we should save some soap for others. I laughed, but the man just gave me a poker face while continuing to grab soaps. After a while, he pushed his cart without saying a word, so I let it be. I thought he might be reselling them or had some other use for them, so I didn't question him further. Some people really dislike being asked too many questions. I returned to my spot and quickly arranged the soaps because I had to refill the display after the man took so many. As he walked away, I heard packs of soap falling, one by one. When I looked at him, I got annoyed because he was deliberately dropping soaps from his cart as he walked. I approached him and told him he couldn't do that. He just glared at me. I grabbed the handle of his cart, but he swatted my hand away. Being persistent, I grabbed it again, but he got mad and tipped over his cart, spilling soaps all over the floor. At that moment, our security personnel approached him and told him to leave because he was causing trouble. The man still wouldn't budge and didn't want the security personnel to escort him out. The weird part was that he started crying, like seriously sobbing. Without warning, he approached me, grabbed me by the collar, but I managed to break free. The security personnel forcibly escorted him out and kept watch to ensure he didn't come back. While calming myself down, one of our kind managers told me to go home early and come back the next day. He told me to rest and not to worry about it, saying that incidents like these happen at Walmart and that he had seen worse in his time as a manager. He reassured me that the man was banned from the store. Before heading home, I sat in the break room to drink some coffee and ate some snacks, and then left Walmart. I exited through the front door, relieved that the man was no longer there after being escorted out by security personnel. As I walked, I couldn't help but look around, unable to shake off what had happened earlier. When I reached the dark part of the parking lot, I heard a whistle. I ignored it, thinking it might be the man from earlier. As I passed that area, the whistling continued. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I looked back and saw the man, just as I had suspected. This time, he was holding a pipe and pointing it at me as if signaling me to stop and that I was in trouble. I ran away immediately. As I ran, I kept glancing back and saw that he was chasing me. Although he was running slowly, it was still terrifying because he was pursuing me. I couldn't find a place to hide and be safe. I decided to turn into another part of the parking lot that led to the back of Walmart, hoping there might be some employees taking a cigarette break who could help me. When I turned, I didn't see the man anymore. I stopped to catch my breath, but the man had cut through the parked cars on the side, and I saw him emerging between two parked cars on my right side. I ran again, faster this time, and fortunately, there was an employee standing at the back of Walmart who saw me running. I immediately told him that someone was chasing me, but by that time, we couldn't see the man anymore. He probably gave up the chase because I had company. In all my time working at that Walmart, I couldn't shake off that incident. It made me anxious every time I went home. I avoided passing through dark areas of the parking lot. Thankfully, the man never showed up again, and he never returned to that Walmart since he was banned. I don't know why some people go to such lengths, but it's genuinely unsettling. Roughly 8 years ago, my husband and I frequently did our grocery shopping at night. It wasn't as crowded, and it was the only time we could fit it into our schedules since we were always busy during the day with work. We grocery shopped every week, and that night we had a lot to buy. As soon as we entered, we headed straight to the grocery section. While we were picking out items, I couldn't help but notice a woman who was hovering around us. She kept glancing at our cart, and whatever we put in, she would discreetly take the same items from the shelves. After a while, she approached us and asked if I remembered her. She claimed to be a former high school classmate named Leah and said she wasn't sure if it was really me at first, but now she was certain and decided to ask. Well, I had no memory of her, and she seemed like a local. We were in California and I went to high school in Utah. I played along, pretending to remember her. I let her talk, agreeing with whatever she said, even though I had no idea what she was talking about. I probably said, "That's crazy," at least 3 times during her stories, but she didn't stop talking. My husband and I exchanged glances, and he signaled that we should keep moving. I told her we were in a hurry and it was nice meeting her. She didn't follow us and just said goodbye. About 5 minutes later, we were in another aisle, and I noticed the woman following us again. This time I felt really uneasy, and my husband felt the same. He couldn't even grab the items he needed, saying he'd just get them tomorrow night. So we decided to check out. As we were pushing our carts to the cashier, the woman suddenly cut in front of us. At that point, we were annoyed, but she just smiled and said hi again. While we waited in line and the cashier was ringing up the items of the man in front of us, I kept wondering if I really knew her. But I couldn't remember her at all, and I wasn't very social in high school. No matter how hard I tried to recall, there was nothing. She looked at me and commented on how much I had changed. She said I had glowed up while she had glowed down. I just smiled like, yeah? When it was her turn to check out, I sighed with relief. But then, when the cashier asked for her payment, she told him that I would pay for her groceries. She claimed to be my best friend. That shocked both me and my husband. I told the cashier that I didn't know her and that she wasn't with us. We had been feeling weirded out by her for a while. The security personnel at Walmart noticed the commotion and asked the cashier if there was a problem. My husband explained the situation, and the security personnel focused on the woman. At that point, she was furious with us, shouting all sorts of things. The security personnel escorted her out, and she left empty-handed because she couldn't take the items she had picked. While the cashier rang up our items, the woman cursed at me, acting like she had known me forever and was deeply disappointed in me. She claimed I had always been this entitled, even though I really didn't know her. She eventually left after being forced out by the security personnel. As we walked out, we saw her outside. My husband told me to stay calm and keep walking because it wasn't worth it. She yelled all kinds of things at us, like hoping we'd get divorced and my husband would cheat on me. She even cursed us, wishing we'd fall seriously ill and not live long. But what shocked me the most was when she mentioned my 2 children by name, saying she hoped God would protect them. I was furious and confronted her, but she just laughed sarcastically. She said I'd get my comeuppance one day and that she'd never forget that night. Then she turned and left while I shouted, "Don't you dare touch my kids!" After that night, we never shopped at that Walmart again. I kept a close eye on my kids, feeling very unsettled. I even looked through my high school yearbook but couldn't find anyone named Leah or anyone who looked like her. I was angry and creeped out, wondering how she knew my kids' names. It was very disturbing for us as parents. Thankfully, my kids stayed safe and I never saw that woman again. My husband and I didn't get divorced either. We're still going strong after 20 years. My biggest worry was turning 18. Besides needing to pass college entrance exams and find a decent course, I had to move out of my parents' house and support my education. Although my parents covered 30% of my financial needs, I had to find the remaining 70% myself. This meant I needed a job. One of my classmates from freshman year, let's call her Jane, worked at Walmart. She knew I was struggling financially and suggested I work there since our college workload wasn't too heavy yet. I got the job and we both worked the night shift. The work was manageable and I was happy I could handle the setup despite the pressure. One of the weirdest and scariest experiences of my life happened the night before the Black Friday sale. On November 27, 2014, I was assigned to the electronics section. There were many deals and people were fighting over items, especially laptops. I was assisting customers and the aisle was packed with laptops. Even before the next day, our laptops were nearly sold out, especially a popular model with great specs. Around 9:20 p.m., 40 minutes before my shift ended, a woman arrived, took a laptop, liked it, and put it in her cart. She smiled at me, but then a man rammed her cart with his. He claimed he needed that laptop and blamed me for not reserving it for him, saying he told me earlier he would get it after finding a cart. I told him, "Sir, I don't recall you telling me that. Maybe you told one of my workmates." He insisted it was me and got very angry. Even if I wanted to give him the laptop, I couldn't because the woman already had it. I was exhausted and not in the best mood since I couldn't visit my family in New Jersey for Thanksgiving due to financial reasons. I just wanted to resolve the situation, but I couldn't. The man hurled hurtful words at me. He couldn't confront the woman, so he directed his anger at me. At one point, he tried to grab the laptop from her cart, but her son defended her. Black Friday really brings out the crazy. I didn't take his words personally because I needed the job and didn't want to get fired. This was my first time experiencing something like this, but I wasn't surprised since I was prepared for such scenarios. After about 10 minutes, the man reluctantly grabbed a different laptop model with lower specs and left the aisle. Before leaving, he glared at me. I sighed and got ready to clock out. My coworker told me not to take it to heart because we knew better. That night, I exited through the back since my coworker had to extend their shift, leaving me alone. I felt an unusual chill and my heart raced as I walked. I continued walking until I reached the pedestrian lane. My place was within walking distance, so I walked home. When I crossed the street, I saw a man standing where I came from. I looked closely and realized it was the man from Walmart. He had his hands in his jacket pockets. I walked casually, but he crossed the street and started walking faster. I got scared and started running. He ran too. I knew things wouldn't end well if he caught me. I had many thoughts racing through my mind, but my main focus was not to trip. I reached my driveway and hurriedly fished my keys from my tote bag. As I opened the door, the man grabbed my shoulder hard and pressed himself against me. I could feel his zipper and thigh against my back. I elbowed him in the stomach, but he laughed and grabbed my chest. I managed to open the door, punched him hard in the neck, and he grabbed his throat. I quickly got inside and locked the door. I was alone since my housemates were away. I called 911 and the officers arrived quickly, but the man was gone. Thankfully, the CCTV at Walmart caught his face, and the officers identified him. I filed a complaint for my safety since he knew where I lived. The officers found out he already had a prior complaint and was a felon on probation. This was his first sexual assault attempt. Because of my report, he was sent back to jail.